Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Satsang. And as always, I'm delighted that you've all decided to come and hang out with me and to explore our own true identity. As always, please hide your privacy. No, I don't care. As always, I invite you all to just kind of chip in and say hello, where you're from. It's always wonderful to see. Dr. Damien in Ohio, welcome, welcome. Lamar, greetings. Um, Lisa, 1013, IGP from Russia, wonderful. Emiliano from Sweden. Well, hello, everyone. And as people are coming on line and joining us, I always like to try to think of something that I can say in the beginning as people are beginning to join. Um, and sometimes I just don't have anything to say. A long time ago, I used to be really quite gregarious. I mean, I still am. I'm very comfortable talking about pretty much anything. But it used to be all I did. I mean, every room I would kind of dominate it. I was about 39 years old, and all of a sudden, this one habit. I mean, it really is a conditioned habit. When something works for you, there's a tendency to want to keep doing it, which means, of course, you don't grow. you're, if you can end up being a one-trick pony. And I was like that. One of the easiest places to hide is in plain sight, and I really wanted to hide. And but for me, speaking and talking and being social, everything came just so easily that was the place that I could hide. Well, it's about 39 years old, and all of a sudden I was like in a situation, opening my mouth to say something, and nothing came out. And when I really started doing the inner work, because I hadn't done any inner work, it's not like I hadn't done inner work, it's just I hadn't done it. It's, you don't question the things that are working really well until they don't work so well anymore, right? And I just discovered that this whole aspect of me, I was exhausted, really. I was just tired of always, you know, grabbing the attention, always focusing the attention, always kind of running the show, always leading in the room. And all of a sudden, none of that. I just stopped. I'd go places, I'd be with people, and I wouldn't say anything. At first, it was really awkward because I was so used to being in the center of it. And after a while, I just became really comfortable with being quiet, and I could just be present. And when that happened, a whole bunch of different kinds of opportunities. I became really comfortable with just being quiet. The conversations I had became deeper. They became more intimate. There was this frenetic energy about me that just really, really calmed down. Um, uh, and it was really a major transition. And it's when I realized how easy it is to get, locked into habits, not just the negative ones, but the ones that are positive. When we have a tool that works, we tend to want to keep using that tool, right? We don't want to give it up. Um, and so it can be a way of becoming extremely limited. But when life forces you when that doesn't work anymore, when life forces you into a different environment, a different circumstance, one means or one mechanism or another, it's actually the best thing that could possibly happen to you. Because it's only when the way we do things fails and we step into this unknowing that we actually awaken new, different, sometimes even better inner resources that we simply don't get to or access because we're in kind of following this habitual pattern. This is true of all, even qualities that are negative. I mean, are quite negative. Like there are some people who just always get angry. I knew some people who that was their modus operandi, and I realized that that had worked for them. They had simply bullied or intimidated their way through life, and it had worked. People were just kind of like, yeah, whatever, and they give up on it. And then I saw how uncomfortable it was when they were in a situation where they couldn't bully, and how they always want to go to that. So anger can be that way. Being a victim, playing the role of the victim can be a strategy that actually works. We have to understand that our repetitive behaviors are, in fact, strategies of the nervous system that have worked. They wouldn't be there if they hadn't worked. You know, the behaviors that your nervous system creates and steps into and makes automatic are the ones that have guaranteed your survival in an environment. And if the environment changes, which eventually it does, it always has to, it will try to recreate that environment. So people will go from their parents' house into a house with somebody in a relationship and have a very similar, if not an identical, um, uh, environment or atmosphere. It's the comfort we feel is simply a habit that has worked at one time. And habits are very strong. They will continue even when they're not working anymore. The whole study with Pavlov's dogs and the like, ringing the bell, getting the it came that they didn't have to always show the dog the meat in order for it to get excited. Just the ringing the bell. And in fact, if if the if the when the actual reward showed up was not consistent, it was just kind of random here and there, that was the deepest kind of programming that there could be. So don't be there's no need to be feel bad, feel put upon, feel punished, feel strained when life throws things at you that you're not prepared for. That is the only way in which we really discover new powers within us. I mean, human beings are energy conserving machines. we don't want to put out more energy than we absolutely have to. And so we will stay in a situation, even if it's uncomfortable, until it gets unbearable. Then we're forced to, we will just make it as comfortable as we possibly can until you just can't do it anymore. Part of becoming spiritually awake is actually having less and less and less of a tolerance for that for the discomfort that we all feel because we're simply not being ourselves. Well, I have some questions popping up already. So let me make sure. Let me go back to the top here. Come on. Oh, I gotta do it like this. Scroll up. Make sure. Let's see. Hi from Emiliano from Sweden. We got a hello from a holiday week in Utah from Alia. Is that Alia? Yeah. All originally, but lives in Arizona. Good evening from France, from Pearl. Hello. Ewa says hello from Poland. Barbaro from hello, Merry Christmas from Sweden. Isvailo from Bulgaria. Sunil Chopra, hi from Birmingham, UK. Sunil, very good, thank you. Sunil. Gada, hi from Egypt. I think this may be our first person here from Egypt. Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to have you. Chrissy from New Zealand. Hello, Chrissy. Dinesh, hi GP, love your videos. Thank you very much. Dr. Damien has a question. GP, with the holiday coming up, actually it's upon us, and having to be around family in large groups, I find it easy to be drawn into the mind and its problems. I lose sight of the present moment. What can we do to stay centered? Whew. I actually created a series of meditations, not directly towards staying center in a group like that, but just all of the kinds of distractions that confront us. Um, the very this will make the whole thing easier for you. The very fact that you know that it's happening is, in fact, the the beginning of the solution, of the end of that. When you first become aware that, oh, I'm back into my mind, sometimes there's very little you can do. I mean, around our family, especially most families, I mean, we live in a mental world. Our our thoughts about things we really think are to be the truth. You know, especially if you get in a group. Like when I was a kid, it was very uh, extreme political conversations out of anger and venom, and that we were right and then the others were the evildoers, that sort of thing. um, and it's very heady, very, very, very much in the mind. Just notice that it's there. And what you can do, because you can't simply withdraw, chant Om and close your eyes. You're there with the people. But just notice that it's happening. Notice that everybody wants to kind of drag you into that conversation. Um, One thing you can do is actually just bring your attention into your body. You don't have to cut off the conversation. You have to go off by yourself. Although if you want to, you can. There's nothing stopping you. Bring your attention down really into your heart or into your gut, into the heart center or into the lower dantian, right below your navel, right this center place. That it's the center of martial arts. I recently had to make a decision about something, and I was really going, and I was spinning, and so I said that to my son. He says, "Well, where are you feeling it in your body?" And I was like, "Oh yes, of course." Bring your attention back into the body. The head's going to be spinning. It couldn't make a decision. But when I brought my attention back into the body, I knew exactly what to do. It was, right, of course. My body was clear, right? That kind of heart energy and gut energy, which is not mental, um, has a level of wisdom that the mind does not have. So noticing that it is happening, and even noticing that there's almost nothing you can do about it, and letting go of the idea that somehow it's supposed to be different, that I'm not supposed to be in my head, which is just another thought in your head. So just bring your attention into your body. What are you feeling when you're talking to them, when this stuff is this is going on? And you'll feel much more of a grounding take place. And it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest doing that the conversation changes as well. Because the fact is, when somebody learns how to be out of their head and into their bodies, which is what you mean by centered, it is so much nicer. It is so much calmer that we kind of want more of it. We don't want to be going back up there again, but it is a habit. And of course, we're around people who are stuck in their heads. You're going to feel that energy. You're going to feel that lack of groundedness, that lack of centeredness, because the mind is not grounded or centered. It is always just this reaction. It's just describing things and comparing things. There's nothing really substantial there. So just bring it into your body and just watch what happens, right? And don't think you need to change things. Don't think you need to change them. Don't think you need to be any different. All you're doing is being aware that being in your head doesn't feel good, and go into your body where it does. And for me, it's like I can even try imagining looking at the room from my heart, from this heart energy, rather than through my eyes. And I become much more sensitive to what I'm feeling rather than what I am thinking. And you'll feel that settle in. Now, you'll get distracted. You'll find yourself back in the head again. But the moment you notice that you're back in the head, rejoice, because that means that consciousness has in fact withdrawn from the habit of being in your head. The seeing is, that's right, there it is again. And you just keep going back in your body, keep going back in your body. And eventually you won't leave, right? The mind activity will be there, but it won't leave. The sense of being grounded, the sense of being present, uh, won't be affected by the fact that you happen to be engaged with your mind. Does that help you, Dr. Damien? Mark email says, is an awakening on a cultural basis something that can happen, since awakening is being outside the mind, which is culture? Um, Awakening has nothing to do with culture. The awakening will express itself in cultural terms, right? So if you're a Hindu, you'll express it one way. If you're Jewish, you'll expect another. Is Muslim, you'll expect a different way. If you're Korean, or so the culture will is kind of like the costume. It will appear as in within that form, but it will not be originating there. You're absolutely right. The mind is culture. The sense of identity that gets created in every individual is cultural, which it really is way more than that, than anything personal. It's got variations because your personal experience of interacting with the culture, aka your parents, um, will form a particular kind of pattern of reaction behavior in you. But the mind is culture. You cannot separate them. The ego is culture. You cannot separate those. But the awakening steps outside of that. It steps you see that all cultural views are transient, they're arbitrary, they just happen to be the way the culture evolves, and there's nothing inherently truthful about them. It's just the clothes that are being worn. And the problem, of course, with culture is people so strongly identify with it will even get violent and hurt each other because this is the truth and that's not. Mistaking the costume that truth is wearing for the truth itself. Truth is transcultural. It is transpersonal. It goes completely beyond any form, yet any form is capable of giving expression. I mean, I'm expressing the awakening in words, in English, right? And I'm a white male born in 1952. So all of that's cultural, right? Through that, but what's being expressed has nothing to do with any of that. And that's part of the liberation, is seeing that the truth is not bound or constrained by culture. And to actually see that liberates you from the culture, the feeling of the burden of culture. It doesn't mean you have, if you're a Muslim, you're then drop being a Muslim. Of course not. Or if you're a Hindu, now you're not going to be a Hindu anymore. You're going to be something else. Of course not. You may very well partake of those cultural costumes. You may not. It really does. It really depends. Um, so the idea that the actual experience of awakening simply obliterates the mind and culture, and everything goes. You just see it for what it actually is, not a truth, but just a temporary form. And that the real you is not bound by any form. The real you is formless, like water. The culture is like the jar. The water you put in the jar, it conforms to the shape of the jar, but at some point you can just take it out of the jar and pour it. The thing that is being conformed to the environment or the culture is formless. And that's what you actually are. That's what the awakening is. You awaken to your true nature as formless awareness, just pure being that is not bound by anything, and yet can appear in and with anything. In fact, if the awakening does not appear as someone, there's no expression of it. It's like being a musician without an instrument. Both of them go together. The only mistake, the awakening, is realizing that the form you are appearing in is not what you are. It is just a temporary form you're in, which then frees you from being stuck in it, and also frees the form to be fully whatever it needs to be, whatever it's capable of being. It liberates that energy so that you, as just this, everyday person doing their life, is now no longer just that everyday person. It is literally the truth in human form. And that's what this is already. Does that answer your question, Mark? You had said something, is it on a cultural basis? I think I answered that transcends it transcends culture. Oh my, all of a sudden I got a ton of questions here. State Mark is okay. This one is from Alia. Is it Ala or Alia? I think it's Alia. It's kind of hard for me to see. The screen is a bit of a distance away because I have to have all this stuff in front of me so you could see me. I've been through a lot of stressful situations in the past where if someone is yelling at me, my body reacts by shaking, even though I feel calm. I didn't respond to the person because they were looking for validation from me. They seemed to want me to answer, but I let them go. Very good. Very good. Yes, it's a very important, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not really it's a very important opening when you recognize that there's a calmness there and your body is shaking. Whenever we're confronted with someone by something, remember the body's natural reaction is fight or flight. So that sense of agitation is the body determining, am I running or am I fighting? And if you can't run, well, then there's this feeling about, that's the shaking and all of that. That's the energy simply within the system. There's nothing wrong with it. If you think there's something wrong with that, then you're going to start fighting that. Right? So you just relax into it and let it be there. It's also a defensive posture that used to happen to me a lot, just because of the relationship I had um, with my parents. For the longest time, when somebody would come down on me about anything, I just feel the energy drain out of me. I just like, yeah, just I was, was an 8-year-old kid again. But over time, as I just let that all happen, let it move through the system, it just started to dissipate, and I found it simply didn't happen anymore. First off, not as many people were even confronting me about something, and secondarily, when something did come up, there was just this relaxation because the nervous system had become used to the idea that in every circumstances there were inner resources available. When it doesn't feel like there are, or there aren't, because like your little kid, it's terrible. It's terrifying, right? Because all you want to do is get out of there, and that's what that energy is. And I think you did the right thing. You didn't engage, didn't give them the whatever it is that they were looking for, and just let them go. After that, though, I would recommend things like that. Go take a walk, move your body, dance, give your body permission to discharge that energy that built up, that it was, it was in a state, it was ready to, run or fight. So whenever things like that happen, don't just, crawl into a corner, move, give the body an opportunity to shake all that energy out. Because if you don't, that's, it's actually part of the trauma. Really let your body discharge that energy that has been that's been created in order to deal with what is perceived as a real dangerous threat. So the good news is that the clearer you are in your seeing, the easier it gets. And you're noticing that there's a calm there. Well, just bring your attention to the calm and give the body permission to do whatever it needs to do. And you'll find that it will begin to adjust to the calmness really quite quickly. Matt says hi from Sydney. Hello. Good. Um, Aliyah continues. I think at my age, 26, I find that the most difficult part is when random emotions come up. I've been through a lot, lost an uncle and my mom and a bunch of other things. I just acknowledged them and let and then let them go. Yes, I always want to make sure we're clear when using that term, let them go. It was very, let it go was a very popular thing. Is, there's several different kinds of emotional releasing techniques out there. Um, what I found was that people are letting something go. It means they're trying to make it go away. If you instead, it's okay to use the term "let it go," but let it mean this: that you're simply taking your hands off of it and letting it do whatever it needs to do. When something is stressing us or pressing on us, we want to just let go. But what we really want to do is we want it to go away. We want to let it go away, which of course creates the very same uh, conflict that will quite literally keep it in place. So to let something go means you're simply letting the emotions move through you. You're not fighting them. You're not encouraging them. You're not adding to the story. I mean, if you've had some significant losses with an uncle and your mother, and other things you've mentioned, make sure that you let yourself grieve those losses. That you don't try to use, I'm just going to let it go. When I say let go, what I mean, let go and let it do whatever it's going to do. If that's cry and grief, then you cry and grieve. If there's just kind of a calm and a peace there, it's calm and peace there. If your body wants to dance or move, you dance or move. So it's always an acknowledgement and a letting go of resistance to what you're feeling. Just notice that's a habit of trying to push back on things that are unpleasant, and you've experienced some really unpleasant things. You mentioned in the beginning, says difficult part when random emotions come up. There's no such thing as a random emotion. The emotional system is always in reaction to the environment. You might not be aware of what in the environment the nervous system is actually reacting to, but it always does. Emotions are not self-generated. They are not. They don't make themselves happen. It's a very, it's a very beautiful continuum between sensation, emotion, and thought. And so emotions are always reactive. They are never causative. Um, so there's no such thing as a random emotion. Now, you don't have to understand what the cause is. You don't have to understand anything about it if you're in the state where you just simply allow it to be there. And if it's important, if if the emotion that you're experiencing is important, that is something that needs to be resolved, well, just being with it will give it the space it needs for it to fulfill whatever it needs to fulfill. Uh, and if it isn't, if it's just kind of a momentary reaction, and it's, something happens in the environment, it reacts for a second, not a problem, the reaction goes away. So nothing is ever random. Nothing this system does, the body, the mind, the emotion, is random. It is always part of a chain of events, of a chain of causation. And to come to understand that deeply and to allow everything in you to happen, you become the primary cause. It's no longer just reacting to the environment, because the more you're discovering your clear, calm center, the more that becomes the the main catalyst for driving all of the reactions. And that puts you in the position of being quite powerful and resourceful in any circumstance. So does that answer it for you, Alia? Matt says hi from Germany. Glad to be here. This is great. Russia, Bulgaria. Wow, wonderful. Dinesh, cultural awakening will. It's just a comment to somebody else. Mark, suffering is a distraction. Um, Popey says, hi, GP. I subscribe to the new channel. Oh, very good. Yes, I've created a channel with my partner and main student, Evan, to provide more about inner reconciliation, and also an opportunity for those students of mine who have become certified as coaches in inner reconciliation to start contributing to the dialogue and actually getting comfortable in front of the camera. Patang says, "Hi GP, good evening from Israel." Good evening. Good evening to you. Next culture, isn't that like saying, okay, those guys are talking amongst each other. That's great. Shanika says, "Hi GP, lovely to see you again. My son asked me, Mummy, what is the point of life if we die?" Can you? That's great. Kids are wonderful. Out of the mouth of babes, thou hast perfected wisdom. Can you give an answer to that question, please? Wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you. Love from London. She's in London. It depends on how old the child is. And we go, and I would use it as an opportunity to say, yes, you know, everything eventually dies. Everything stops. This body stops. You don't stop, but this body stops. And the reason that is the way it is so that we will deeply appreciate the value of things, because everything is temporary. So when something's here, it's precious because it's here, because you have no idea when it's not going to be here. It is, you know, the thing that makes something valuable is its rarity, right? It's how unique it is. The more rare it is, the more value it is. Well, there's nothing more rare than you. There's nothing more rare than this moment and what the particular events that are going on in this moment. I would just say how important, take, you know, maybe it's a little kid, say, how important is your teddy bear, right? Right? And what would you feel like if that wasn't there anymore? And they'd say, I really want, well, that's love. That appreciation of things when you have them is love. And that's the point. That's the point of life. It's not that we're supposed to accomplish anything. It's just it's the place where we learn to simply love this moment and love what is, which is really easy for children, by the way, because that's where they live all the time. And so that's the point. The point is to simply enjoy this moment. As Rumi said, the soul is here for its own joy. That's the purpose. It's not some purpose out there that we have to fulfill, just to love this moment just as it is. And the older you get, the more you can appreciate how transient and fleeting these moments are, and therefore the more appreciation you can have for it. Does that help for you? Help you, Shanika, with that? Sunil says, I found your meditation on no boundary to awareness to be very helpful. I'm glad. Like a foundation, I felt spacious and less identified with thought, but combining it with this body awareness is important. Yes, yes. And it almost seems like a contradiction, right? But that's only because we don't really understand what the body is, right? The awareness that is what you are is boundless. It has no limits. But the expression of the infinite nature of awareness would be nothing. It would be unknown were there not forms to give it expression. I like to use the example of music. Music just, music without notes and singing and playing, I mean, yes, it would exist. The potential for it would exist, but it would be unknown. It's when it takes a specific form. Now, music is not limited to a song, right? We can't say this song is all there is to music, but yet that's what we do to ourselves. I'm awareness, and we think I'm limited to this body. Well, you're not. But that doesn't mean the mission is to get out of the body. It is to simply not identify with the body and then use this body mind as a tool of self-expression, and whatever it has available to it. And everyone is different. Every single body is different, can do different things, has different interests and all of that. Um, so the idea is to we're not trying to get out of anything. That's the difference between Hinayana Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. The Hinayana Buddhism, the ideal is nirvana, getting out of all this, freed of all of this, including the body. That was regarded as the lesser vehicle by Buddha himself. That was not the point. Nirvana was not the point. Enlightenment was the point. And the Mahayana path was the path of the Bodhisattva, the one whose entire life then was simply alleviating suffering, because suffering had been alleviated for them. Until even even says, and after the suffering beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. And then it says, and having saved them all, not a single being was saved. It's one of those beautifully paradoxical statements, is that what we're really doing is not just trying to get out of our bodies, but to get fully into them, into this particular embodiment, and be so totally present in the moment that you bring every moment exactly what it needs. If it's joy, it's joy. If it's compassion, it's compassion. If it's love, whatever the moment needs. And now you are life. You're not trying to get out of life. You have overcome the source of all suffering, which is identification with the body. When you think I am this body, consciousness, which is infinite, now takes on the limitations of the body. Well, the body is limited. Of course it is. Right? A piano is not a guitar, right? It's a piano. This is what it does. There's this, and what it can do great, and there's some things it can't do at all, right? Your body is the same way, but that doesn't mean you're limited to that. You're not at all. This is simply the limitations of this vehicle. So you're going to play it. If you play the guitar, you play the guitar. It'll be a classical gut string guitar, or an electric Ibanez or something. Very, very different, and have very, very different characteristics, and have completely different modes of expression. Well, that's what your body mind is. It's just this extremely sophisticated vehicle of expression, but it is specific. It's a specific form. That form will eventually dissolve. The water that you are will fall out of that container and go back to the infinite ocean from whence it came, and perhaps another one will arise. But that's the point. The end of suffering is when we are no longer identified with the body. And once that happens, you have full access to everything that the body has. It now becomes a vehicle. It becomes something valuable. It isn't something I'm trying to get out of anymore. It's like, I'm already out, and I'm happy to be in this form, doing this, right? It's just how I get to express my infinite nature in this moment. But I have eternity for expressing the infinite nature. I'm never going to run out of things to do and forms to take. There's no end to it. So completely exploring this moment without trying to make it into something else or turn it into a stepping stone to something else, that's the ultimate achievement. That's heaven. That's where we want to get to. That's the Mahayana path. So, so yes, the your awareness, your true nature is boundless, and it willingly embraces the form, so that you see that form is emptiness, emptiness is form. You see that they're not two. And we only believe ourselves to be confined to it. Once that is gone, the form itself becomes flexible and malleable and could do so many things you wouldn't even imagine you could do. Pretty much anything. Dr. Damien says, thanks, GP. I do find that I am beginning to be more aware of the shift from my body into my mind. Perfect. And also the other way of my mind back into my body. Yes, you can feel it. It has a very recognizable quality when you're simply in your mind and you are disassociated from your body. It has a recognizable quality, and returning back to the body has a recognizable quality that is far more satisfying and calm and comfortable than your head, which is, I mean, if you're only in your head, there's no stability. Minds aren't stable. They're like buzzing around all over the place. If that's where you are, then you're going to feel like you're buzzing around all over the place. But your body is much more present. It's here. It's just, it isn't in the past or the future. It is simply very much right now aware and responsive. So that's good. That is such a great bit of progress to be able to recognize that you are recognizing the difference, because seeing that difference will amplify it. It'll only get bigger. I'm in my mind again. You're going to identify it from the feeling and just right back to where you belong. And the effect that has is that it actually clears the mind. The mind isn't being unduly stressed. It isn't being overexcited, right? It calms down and it becomes a really powerful tool. Then it's your friend. Until then, it's not your friend. Let's see. Matt says, I recently separated from a 15-year relationship. Oof, I feel so lost. My identity has been ripped away. I feel very unhappy and don't know how to rebuild my life without my partner. Christmas alone is daunting. Yes. No, I was 36 when I got divorced. I was in bad shape, physically bad shape. I wasn't, I'd gotten fat, and I mean a whole bunch of stuff. It was a very difficult marriage. I started making some changes. I started going to the gym. I started taking care of myself, and I remember shortly after that, living on my own, going shopping for clothes. And I've been married for 13 years and raised two kids. They were like 12, 11 and 12 when I got divorced. And I just been father. I just taken care of business. I'd done what I was supposed to do. It was the first time I was actually just by myself going out and not just getting stuff because I had to get it, but what did I like? I had no idea. I walked around. I had no idea what to even choose. It was like, well, who am I? I didn't know. It was like, and for the longest time, I wouldn't buy any clothes or anything unless I saw it on the mannequin, because I had no idea. I could put it on or look in the mirror. I still couldn't tell. When we are in a relationship, a long-term relationship, 15 years, the blending of the energy is so total that it is completely disorienting when it splits. It may be even worse than a death, because they're actually still there, right? It's not cold turkey. And so it's going to take some time for the nervous system to begin to cut the cords that it was used to being there. I mean, even if the relationship was bad at the end, and obviously it couldn't have been great or you wouldn't be separating, it's still trying to perpetuate that the sameness of it, the stability of it. So you are going to feel as if you lost your identity, because your main identity had been in relationship to this other. That's where all the cues were coming as to who am I. When that gone, all of those cues, all of those validations, all negative or positive, aren't there anymore. Which means there's this sense of, well, who am I? How do I react? How do I do anything? People get couples, they go places together. So there's always this dynamic going on, and boom, it's gone. believe me, your nervous system itself will begin to adjust. What I always recommend is start looking for the things that you like, you know, the things that you just like. And when we're in a relationship, everything you do, that you're always wondering, how's it going to affect them? How are they going to, what are they going to think? How, and so there's always this internal dialogue, this internal editing of what your preferences are, because you're part of the relationship. It's not a bad thing. This is just kind of the way it works. Okay, that's not there now. So yes, this world is completely new and strange. You don't know what you want. You don't know how to. You're not rebuilding your life. You're building another one. Okay, you're not rebuilding. That's that's really the wrong word. Although our nervous system wants to simply rebuild, it wants to recreate what it had. That's the whole rebound thing, right? Don't get into anything quick. Take your time and begin to explore you, just you. Decisions made only for you. they they're the only criteria for it is, does it benefit me? Does it make me feel good? Is this enhancing my life without any consideration for anybody else? It's big. It's really big. And it's hard for men, way harder than women realize, because we're just so used to being in that role. But it's maybe a little harder for women, because women are much more take much more naturally to relationships than men do. It has different meaning within the system, and it is the flow between those energies that has made us such a successful species. Excuse me. So take your time. Yes, Christmas, allow the feelings that you're having. Christmas morning comes up and you're alone. I've had that experience. It's like, oh, okay. And I'm just kind of alone with it, and just be there with it. And then decide what you want it to be for you. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe you go dinner by yourself. Maybe you just sit around. Maybe you go to a movie. Maybe you read a book. Maybe you go to church or not. Maybe you go meditate somewhere. Turn it into whatever you want it to be. Then it won't be daunting. It's only daunting because what you used to do is not there. The habit cannot be fulfilled. Right? But you can still be fulfilled. You just have to discover how. And to me, it's not a bad thing. It's difficult for sure, but it's not a bad thing. And as I said at the beginning, that the only way we actually grow is when we are confronted with circumstances that we've never been confronted with before. It's the only way it happens. We will always seek the stable. Takes a lot to get us to consciously choose to change. Even most of the time when people say, I want to have a better life, it really is just a variation on the one that they have. And the better life that they want, they'd love to have the better life without having to change themselves at all. Which is, of course, not possible. I just want to have, different partners or more money or live in a different location, that sort of thing. And I just want the circumstances to be different and me be the same. Not possible. Every time a circumstance changes, you change. And that's one of the reasons why the system is so resistant to change, even changes for the better, because it's different. It's not this. And this I know, this I'm stable in, this I'm comfortable in. Don't rock the boat. That's the position of your nervous system. So I invite you to do something that will be uncomfortable at first, but eventually you're really going to like it. And that is discover yourself. Discover this body mind, its preferences, its desires, the things that it likes. That's all it takes. What do you like now, when you don't have to bounce it against anybody else, when you don't have to check it out to see if it works for the relationship? It only has to work for you. And you're going to discover a lot of stuff. You're probably going to discover a lot of stuff in your life that you really don't need anymore. You don't want it. It doesn't really add anything. Out it'll go. And completely different things will begin to show up. Does that help you, Matt? It says this is tough, but it's going to be really good. It's going to be really good. Starlight Glimmer says, Merry Christmas, GP. What can we do to bring about peace on earth and goodwill all this holiday season? Well, it's pretty much all I ever talk about. It has to start with our own peacefulness. It has to start there. We can't create a peaceful world out of conflict. We can't force people to our wills. That's what governments do now. That's pretty much the way the world works, trying to force each other into conforming to what some particular group has decided is the right way to be. Never works. We have to become wiser than serpents and harmless as doves. We have to follow the example of somebody like Christ, who turned the other cheek. He never imputed guilt to anyone. The beautiful example of being loving under all circumstances and refusing to make somebody into the guilty party. It's just really powerful to ponder the depth of the love he was willing to make manifest. If we discover the peace within us, we will find ourselves being peacemakers. In fact, it's another thing from Christ. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Children of God are those who make peace. And what that means is, first and foremost, to know yourself, to know who you actually are. When you know yourself as that pure conscious awareness, you realize nothing can touch you. They can destroy this body. They won't touch me. Quoting Nisargadatta, he said, I am that principle which witnesses the birth and dissolution of the universe. Think about that. You are that principle that witnesses the coming and going of all things, and yet does not come and go. To know that is to be freed of the fear of that is the opposite of peace, and the fear that is so used today to threaten us, to beat us into submission. If you are at peace, you cannot be manipulated, you cannot be beaten, and you will bring peace everywhere you go. And what that means is that you're not taking sides. You don't walk into somebody in the middle to take sides in some argument. You see both sides as simply being a perception, and you represent the unmoving hub of the wheel, the central love and wisdom that is not moving, is just absolutely still. That's peace. It's happening. It's happening all over the place. And I believe that this arising of this level of awareness and peace within human consciousness is kind of like poking the ego in the side, and it's reacting by becoming more closed, more violent, more assertive, because its days are numbered. Peace is inevitable, but I mean real peace, not peace that's just an intermission between conflicts, but a peace that is itself an unshifting, unchanging reality. And we need to find that within ourselves, because that's where it comes from. It is not a set of external conditions that we manage to create. Those will fall apart. They always do. You can't negotiate peace. You have to be peace. And when you are peace, you yourself will become imperturbable. And what an example for the world that would be. And people who were that kind of peaceful, Buddha, Christ. Look, thousands of years later, we're still talking about them. Christmas is, we're celebrating the birth of it. Birth of the Buddha was celebrated a couple of weeks ago in the Buddhist world. I think it's an accident these guys they celebrate around the same time of year. Um, but that's the kind of impact you can have when you are no longer just identified with this body mind of just being this limited person. If you're an unlimited infinite being, what is there to fear? What could possibly be lacking? What else is there? Peace. That's peace. That's peace that it doesn't come and go. Jessica says hello from San Diego. Hello, Jessica. Good to have you. Sunil says, is the trick to this to combine body awareness with the seeing of true nature? I feel that both complement each other like doorways to openings. Yes, Nisargadatta put it beautifully. The door of the I am opening one way to the full of the full dynamic expression of the universe. It opens the other way to the infinite. So they're not really two. You'll find that as you more and more just aware of the boundlessness of the awareness, that it is not separate from the body and the experience of everyday life. In fact, everyday life is contained in it. And you see it even deeper and you realize that the body is made of it, that the body isn't a thing, that the body is awareness. It is made of that awareness. It is awareness simply in its dynamic expression. So it's kind of like, the fish in the ocean. Their bodies are 90% water, right? There's just temporarily these things come together and make a form, and then they dissolve back into the ocean where they came from, because that's all it is. It's ocean. It's all the ocean. So to see that is to actually have an open doorway, that the body itself becomes a vehicle through which one knows their own awareness, knows themselves as they actually are. And then the difference between them just dissolves, and you'll see that the seeing of the awareness and seeing of the body are the same thing. The body appears in and to the awareness. It is also made of the awareness. That's where the sense of a self and other finally disappears. So now it may seem like they're two different things. I'm infinite awareness and then there's the body, but that's only because there's some remaining identification with the body. When that remaining identification with the body is no longer there, you won't see it as something. You'll see it as just this momentary bubble of consciousness appearing in the vastness of the infinite ocean of awareness. Moonlight says, hi, GP. Hi, Moonlight Delight. If it's clear there are no others, are you motivated to help others through satsang? Why are you motivated? Who are you helping? It's one of the paradoxes. And as I've said, the only thing I can talk about is like the Hinayana path or the Mahayana path. The to see that there are no others doesn't mean you then start ignoring the experience of others, right? We experience many, right? In fact, there are no others, in that there's nothing that exists separate from the central awareness, the infinite awareness. If you are identified as someone, you're going to see others as someone. And therefore, there'll be the division, there'll be an other, and you can have harmonious or maybe discordant relationships. All of that can happen. Once you identify yourself as the awareness, then everyone is the awareness. And all I'm doing is speaking the truth to the truth. I'm simply expressing truth. in this particular form. And we talk about the alleviation of suffering, but ultimately the alleviation of suffering happens when you no longer believe yourself to be the person. That's the answer to suffering. It isn't a change of conditions. It's not even a change of thought. It is simply when you're no longer identified as the body and identified as the infinite awareness, nothing changes. Every one is still there, but you simply don't see them as separate. And what happens then is an enormous compassion arises. Not distance, not a coldness. That's the Hinayana path. Oh, I'm going to get out of this, and there's nobody and nothing, and there's nothing to do and no one to see. And you'll hear a lot of Advaita teachers talk about that. That's not what the Buddha taught. It's not what Christ taught. It's not what my teacher teaches. It is the personal realization of Buddha knowledge. It means there's a natural compassion that arises. You want to save all suffering, all beings from suffering. But the way you do that is not by changing them or changing their circumstances. You have to deal completely with your own perception of them. Right? Every one of those is brought into your own heart. Their problems become your problems. Their suffering becomes your suffering. That all of the separation goes away and it becomes all you. And so now the way in which you have transcended your own suffering becomes the way you transcend suffering for all humanity. So it's not just there are no others anymore, so you could just sit back and don't do it. There's Advaita teachers that talk like that, and I completely disagree, and I have good reason to, and all of Buddhism would agree with me on that. So I hope that answers your question. If you attempt to help others from the perspective that there is another who is suffering, you're actually going to compound it. But if that is coming from your seeing that all suffering is illusory, all suffering arises from a personal, a sense of being a person, at that point, you don't see them as a person. You see them as pure awareness, pure consciousness, a bubble of consciousness on the infinite ocean of awareness. And at which point you're now holding the truth of them. You are seeing them as they actually are. And that will eventually eradicate suffering from your perceived world, from how you perceive things. It's really important to see that this is a felt practice. This is not in the head. It's not enough to just say there aren't any others and get it. You need to feel the oneness. You need to feel the absence of the others. And to do that, you will first feel their suffering. This is what it meant when it said that Christ took on the sins of the world. This is what the Bodhisattva vow is. I vow to save all beings from suffering. And then it goes on to say, and having saved all beings, not a single being was saved. This is the paradox that you are pointing at. I'm saving all beings by seeing that there are no beings to save. But yet saving them is the mission. Is that clear? I know it's very subtle. It's very deep. And you may have to ponder it for a little bit. So try to take it out. It's one of the deeper things to try to grasp, because the impulse, well, if there's no others, then I don't have to worry about any of that. And there's a path. That's the Hinayana path. That's the path of the Arhat. What I'm proposing is the path of the Bodhisattva. Ali says, thank you. I will use your advice in the future. Good. And I'll give more if you need it. Couple of retracted messages. Let's see. Janet says, how can you embrace these lower energies and not fall into the trap of having physical manifestations? How can you embrace them? Well, I can embrace any energy, and at the same time know that it's not absolute, it's not real, it's not the ultimate truth. Lower energy is simply uh, a, a perception of energy. For an example, let's say somebody who's angry most of the time, or somebody's always complaining, or uh, well, those are lower energies, right? Okay. When I say to embrace the lower energies, it's I don't want people angry or complaining all the time, and I certainly don't want to be around them. But when they're there, I can either turn it into suffering for myself by being resistant, by taking this position they shouldn't be there and I don't want them and my preferences and blah 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 blah, or I can just say, well, this is what's happening, this is the energy, and let it pass through. If it passed through, there's no place for it to stick, so it can't manifest anywhere. So when I'm saying embracing the lower energies, what I'm saying is simply embrace what you feel. The mind is going to say this is lower, this is higher, this is important, this is unimportant. Let the energy itself speak. The less resistance there is, the less inner conflict there is, the more energy flows, the more it can it can transform from the forms that are more constricted and limited and negative, if you want to use those terms, lower energies. That very same energy now is in a space in which it can migrate into a much more harmonious form. It's the same energy. All these lower energies are simply energy, which is totally neutral, which has been compressed into a particular form just because of circumstance. So somebody complains all the time, they get in the habit of complaining because probably complaining got them what they needed, or at least help them have some kind of justification for the fact that they feel like they've been left out in life. You don't really know what's underneath it unless you can just be with those feelings. So what I say is, I'm not trying to embrace lower energies, complaining. Let's just embrace complaining. Embrace the feeling, allow every feeling to be there, and give it permission to grow. Give it a safe environment. Don't make an environment that's pushing it away and say, get out of here while you're complaining. Just make this open, spacious environment. And then watch the energy transform. It will transform into harmony. Harmony is the ultimate. It's constricted, it's out of shape. Energy naturally, when it's freed, takes the most creative and appropriate form for every circumstance. So um, hopefully that answers it for you. And there's no one of the things that I always like to point out in this world of manifestation and all of that, there's like this fear that if I entertain this bad energy, it's going to manifest in my life. That's a belief. It's not true. That belief will make things manifest, but not the things themselves. So it's simply not true. The more you are simply allowing of the energy to be there, you are completely and totally open. There's nothing interfering. There's no place for anything to get stuck and thus have any kind of repercussions physically or emotionally or mentally or in any way at all. So hopefully that answers it for you, Janet. Um, Alia says, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you again. Oh, you're very welcome. It was thank you. I will use your, that's advice in the future. Very good. Is life predetermined? Seeking Truth asks, is life predetermined? No, it is not. Neither is it random. The actual reality of it is far more mysterious and far more interesting. Because one hand, somebody would say, oh, it's all predetermined, right? Well, predetermined by who, right? So there's this being up there that's mapping everything out, or maybe this, the board of, the karmic board or something that decides things, or people say again in between lives and decide what the next life is going to be. If you examine any of those enough, they kind of begin to fall apart. They don't really hold up to that kind of scrutiny. Predetermined means that there's some kind of overarching plan that everything is supposed to fill in. It makes you really a cog in the wheel. The alternative, totally random, shit's just happening, right? I mean, that's kind of the position, the Big Bang, and things cool in just such a way, at a particular rate that gave birth to this particular physics and this particular universe, and it's all pretty much, random, right? It just started at this moment. It's not 100% random, right? It's following the process of expansion and cooling. But for the most part, it's not predetermined. The bang happened. You could say that the bang predetermined everything that was going to happen after that, but there's no plan. There's nobody, putting it in place as far as we know. Maybe there is. Maybe but that's the way people look at it. Well, I don't. There's actually a third alternative, and that is the nature of being itself gives rise to an infinite variety of forms arising spontaneously in this moment. So it is not predetermined any more if you've ever heard a really good musician in improvising, like jazz or something, which is, the whole art is improvisation. It's not predetermined at all. If it was, it wouldn't be improvisation. We couldn't do it, right? But at the same time, it's not random, is it? I mean, it fits with the song. It's conforming itself to this particular energy. It expresses the particular style of the musician that's doing it. Same song, different musician. You're going to get a completely different interpretation of it. So nothing is predetermined, other than you're never going to do anything outside of your own nature. Sharks are not going to become vegetarians. It's not going to happen. It's not their nature. So is that predetermined? No, it's not the same. It's not something governing circumstances from the outside. It is your own nature creating circumstances. And really the only suffering humanity is experiencing is an alienation from your own nature. That's it. We're forced into these little boxes that are totally uncomfortable for us. The whale in the swimming pool. I don't belong there. You are an expansive, infinite being, and that's all you crave is to feel and realize that infinite expansion. So, so nothing is predetermined, but it's not random. There's another way of looking at it. It's, again, the beautiful middle way. Everything is unfolding from within, and every single moment expresses the nature of being, but how it's being expressed in that moment is not predetermined, other than this moment will always be an expression of the infinite beingness. End of story. It is not random at all. So is that helpful to find that little place in the middle? It's because it's neither. It's neither this nor that nor both nor neither. It's beyond all of the possibilities. It's this other place that's actually every moment is being created spontaneously. If you want to go even deeper into it, the Buddha's enlightenment happened when he realized that there was no cause and effect, that this moment was a spontaneous appearing, that it wasn't the result of a bunch of things that happened before, that it was happening in this moment, and the whole chain of causation fell apart. That was his awakening. That was his moment of enlightenment. So nothing that's happening now was caused by by what happened yesterday. It appears that way, but that's a projection of the mind. It's not real. It is being caused spontaneously in this moment. Sunil, beautiful analogy between music and the notation of it. Music is not limited to one song, it takes all forms. Thank you for that beautiful answer, GP. He is 9 and has always been a curious boy. Good. Very good. We have a little budding Buddha on our hands. Yeah. What the that kind of question? And well, what's the point of life if all of it's going to do is ending? That's I wish more adults would ask questions like ask, ask questions like that. It would be incredibly powerful. And uh, oh, that was Shanika who said that for the beautiful answer for the child. It was Sunil who liked the analogy between music and the song. It's not limited to anything. Neither are you. You are not limited to anything, and you have all eternity to be everything. Um, oops, there we go again. The one thing, this is Sunil again, the one thing I found with the spaciousness of no boundary to awareness was that it was starting to become a mental pursuit. How do you deal with that so it doesn't become a mental fixation? That's a really good question. Because yes, anything that becomes a regular experience, the mind is going to jump in to try to wrap a context around. That's what it does. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem. Um, the mind will also project upon that and start going that, oh, okay, now that we know ourselves as boundless awareness, well, this is going to solve my problem. It's going to start projecting all sorts of things on that. There's there, there's no advantage as far as the worldly advantage and the things that most that the ego thinks are important. There's no advantage in enlightenment for any of that. Enlightenment, awakening, realizing yourself as pure awareness is its own reward. It isn't something you do so that everything else is going to be better in your life. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's sought for its own sake. It's sought, the truth has to be sought because it's the truth. So that you can, because if there's any kind of hidden agenda or obvious agenda in it, it's going to color it. You're going to be dismissing certain things because they don't conform to what your expectations are. Don't have any expectations. Just be willing to be completely present with what is. Now, the very fact that you noticed that it was starting to become a mental pursuit, right? Who noticed that? You are clearly seeing it, which means you're not it. You are not stuck in that mental pursuit. You're just watching. What you're seeing is the tendency of the mind. This is how it works. This is what the nervous system does. There's no problem with it. There's no there's no issue, right? This just that's what it does. But the very fact that you can sit there and look at it means it's not you. Those thoughts come and go. So when you say, how do you deal with that so that it doesn't become a mental fixation? Is you see it for what it is. That's what the mind does. It wants to categorize things, describe them, put it in a little box so it can that's how the mind objectifies and therefore understands. It wants to objectify the enlightenment. It wants to turn it into an experience that you have, when the reality is enlightenment is you're not there. You, the one you think you are, is gone. That's not an experience. That's reality. Experience is always experienced by something. That's something. The knowing of that something is the awakening. That something is reality. That's you. My green drink. Is that clear? Is that clear for you, Sunil? Starlight, Glimmer, thank you. Good. Have a blessed and joyous holiday. Thank you, I will. Kasavadas, IGP. I'm sorry I just joined. Good to be here. From India, right? I remember you well. We had a nice conversation that one day. It says here from India, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Same to you. Before I am. Hi G, Catherine in Ireland here. Hello, Catherine. I like that name. Before I am. Prior to I am. something a lot of people don't think about. Even before the sense of being is there, you have to be there. The ultimate being is unknowable. You're just that. You're just that. Inner Smile Coach says, first time here. What a wonderful explanation. Oh, thank you. Welcome. Welcome. Where are you located? Inner Smile Coach. I like that name, by the way. The Inner Smile. That's great. You obviously coach people on this sort of thing. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. So that was, do we get some more? No, that was actually the last question that's up. And it's only 2:20. So bring on some more if there's other things you'd like me to elaborate on. I try to not give really lengthy answers to the questions because I get a lot of them. And I mean, last time I only got through like half of them. So I try to get and touch on all of them. But like I said last week, if I don't answer your question, if I don't read it and answer it up, don't worry. You are getting your answer. It's inevitable. I may be talking to you, to somebody else, or answering another question, but believe me, that this energy is so smart. It just goes to where you need it. Right? The very fact that you have a question or that you want to know something, that's the knocking at the door. It will be answered. There's no such thing as a question that goes unanswered. The problem with that most of us experience is that we kind of have an idea of what the answer is supposed to look like, or a preference for what the answer is, and therefore the answer comes and we might not recognize it simply because we're looking for something else. This is why this allowing and just letting your feelings be there, completely open and completely setting all assumptions and ideas aside, and just being totally present with whatever comes up is the open door that allows you to see an answer that may have been just, kicking you in the butt for months. Inner Smile says, Emma from in England. Well, welcome, Emma. Very glad you're here. Is Yil? Hello from Vancouver, Canada. Hello. Could you please give advice on a way to disidentify from the body? Is honoring emotions by allowing them in the body help disidentify? Yes, it does, because you're not fighting with it. This is an important one. To disidentify with the body does not mean that the body changes. It goes, it becomes something different. It stops having feelings. None of that. Right? What we experience as the body is all of the processes and functions and feelings and emotions and sensations and thoughts, everything going on in the body. This is life. This is natural. And there's no problem with it. When I, consciousness, identify with all of those processes and functions that I call the body, and I think I am the body, that's identification. And that will influence, right? I mean, the body now is stuck in that. Your sense of self is stuck in that, and it will feel very, very confined. So one of the ways in which I attempt to help people work past that is by first dropping an antagonistic relationship with the body. I for many years as a spiritual seeker, I thought getting out of the body was the way it was supposed to be. I tended to be more the Hinayana path. I didn't even know about the other. And so I thought it was always about transcending the body. It wasn't until somebody brought me into the body, and I began to realize that the body was not what I thought it was. I only need to get free of my ideas about the body and experience it for what it actually is. And what it actually is the universe, the entire universe right here in this moment. Just like, a wave is the whole ocean. That's the nature of it. It's not separate from the emotion. It has no existence separate from the emotion. from the ocean. And you and I are exactly the same way. So it was a liberation from identification with the body. So that happens. The body didn't have to change. It's the same thing. Didn't have to suddenly become young and handsome, right? It didn't have to do anything different whatsoever. But it did begin to change because my attitude towards it was accepting and loving. I was now taking in feelings as part of life and not as something that I had to get rid of or was a problem to be solved. And I just saw that all of the functioning of life is happening when I'm identified with it, then it all feels very personal. When I'm not identified with it, it's simply life happening. And so the identification is actually enhanced by simply letting yourself feel what you're feeling. Excuse me, disidentification is enhanced by simply letting yourself feel what you're feeling. And the more disidentified you are, the less concerned you are with what the body is feeling, because it's not you. It's simply the functioning of life. That also has a healing effect, which is amazing, because there's just no more pressure on it. The body is just responding very naturally to the environment. It's liberated from being contained, in this resistant energy that is always the egoic mind, always trying to make things different than they are. With disidentification comes a liberation from the ego. And so, yeah, there's this beautiful relationship between the two. And what I found is it starts with body awareness, to let yourself feel whatever you're feeling in that moment. The act of not taking a position, but of being open and allowing everything that's felt to be there, is the act of disidentification. Because when we're identified, this is a good feeling, this is a bad feeling. I like this, I don't like that. Identification is always judging, choosing, restricting. But the moment you start allowing, you're not identifying anymore. Right? That's actually what happens. There's a disidentification. There's no judgment. There's no preference, which means there's no you. The identity has begun to dissolve. And so it's a very direct and practical way of coming into knowing yourself as you really are, simply through I'm not that. It's the neti approach, in a sense. Does that help? It's was that right up there? Yes. Okay. Isiel? Not quite sure how to pronounce your name. So does that help? Hope so. Let me know. Sunil, yes, great answer. I can see the fixation of not being able to switch off from thinking about this awareness as it's a normal part of the mind, rather than something to get rid of or resist. There's, yes, trying to get rid of anything or resisting is the mind. Okay. It wants to think about stuff. If you resist it, you're playing into the game. If you just, that's what it does. That's what it does. That's always going to be what it does. No big deal. And you can just feel the relaxation. Go, oh, okay, it's not a problem. there are no problems. She adds, plus, what's seeing those thoughts is not the thought-based identity. Right, it can't. A thought is not a sentient thing. A thought can't think itself, can't see itself. It's always seen by something else. What's seeing those thoughts isn't a thought. You are not a thought. You have thoughts about you, but those are not you. The one who's aware of those thoughts is not a thought and could never be contained in a thought. That's why you can't know yourself as an object. You can't know yourself phenomenally. You can't know yourself except by being yourself, because you're not a thought. So no thought can possibly capture you. All thoughts are way too small to capture you. You're not a feeling. You're not a sensation. You're not a function. You're not an object. You are that which is aware of all objects. Helen, hello, Helen. How are you? GP, I believe illness is a symptom of emotional dysfunction. I know this from personal experience. What when I can't access the emotional thought triggering the physical problem? Right. So in a situation like that, your mind doesn't have access to the emotion thought that's evolved, the energy that's affecting the body. It may be emotional. It may be, I mean, it could be a bunch of different things. But the distress in the body itself knows what it is. That's why in inner reconciliation, I don't analyze. I just go to the feeling and I stay with it, and I let it tell me what it needs. I create a perfectly safe environment for it, and then the symptom is there, and I'm totally present with the symptom. I completely drop and the agenda of I'm going to fix this, I'm going to change it, I'm going to find out when, all of that. I just become present. Even it's okay for it to be there. Everything is okay. Everything is functioning perfectly. My job is to harmonize with what's happening, and that creates the environment of safety that lets the energy begin to move. Without that environment of safety, it's stuck in that form. We have to change the environment so that the energy can move, and it will always move towards harmony if it can. So that's my approach to it, is to dive into to reconciling with these feelings rather than trying to cure them, trying to fix them, trying to get rid of them. So yeah, the energy can express itself as emotional difficulties, mental or physical. Right? It can manifest as physical symptoms. Right? I mean, to me, that's all there is, are energetic patterns, and traumas, from childhood are stored in the body. Yeah, they're going to have a physical effect in some way. The body's nothing but a particular flavor of energy, like everything else is. So the more we harmonize with that, not trying to fix our emotions, but allow them. You don't need to fix them. If you allow them, they'll fix themselves. I will also use EFT as a way of helping the body um, experience this environment of safety. It's what EFT does. It communicates safety through touch and introduces fresh energy into the system, fresh benevolent energy into the system, and that will actually help free up the space that allows that particular ailment, that particular difficulty to begin to move again. The natural flow of energy is towards harmony. And the only reason it doesn't go there is that something's stopping it. And that something is usually some kind of traumatic stuff. There's some kind of material there that is not wanting this energy to move. And if you're sitting on there, I got to get this energy move, get rid of these negative feelings, you're just contributing to this that's keeping it stuck. That's part of the atmosphere. Let that whole thing go. Say, okay, whatever you are, whatever you need to do, I'm totally with it. You tell me. And you become very sensitive, and you don't have any preconceived notions as to how it's supposed to work. You simply let it work, and you trust that the energy itself knows what to do. The water, when it comes out of the mountain, does not need a GPS to find the ocean. It knows exactly where to go, and it will find its way there as long as you don't put a dam in the way. Casavadas, could you say something about fear that appears often in our minds if you haven't answered the question? Um, fear is a natural response in the body to the threat of danger. The thing is, though, that the body cannot distinguish between images that are of potential danger and real danger that's actually present in the environment. The system was designed for just detecting danger in the environment to keep the body safe. With the advent of mind, of the capacity of of thinking in images, symbolic images, and creating images and anticipating the future has now created pictures that the body for most of our existence was only perceiving if it was really present in the environment. So the same mechanism of fear, which is simply the body getting ready to protect itself, to run or to fight, but usually to run, is now being triggered by images in the mind that aren't real. But it feels with the when that image comes up and we feel it as actual fear in the body, it's as if it's real. Oh, that really could happen, but of course it almost never does. And you can't uh, prepare for that. There's no need to. I mean, yeah, do some plans, save a little money, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, the future is not something you can. The amount of energy we spend trying to control what the future is would bring is just sapping our creative energy. So if when an image of fear appears in your mind and you recognize it, that it's just a habit, it is just the mind's function is to try to keep you safe. It's part of the defensive mechanism. So it's anticipating what might go wrong. But if you identify that it's just a thought, you won't give it so much stock. It won't get so much of your attention. It won't seem so important. And of course, the more less important it gets, the less it begins to appear, and the body doesn't react to it. Being able to sit in the position of realizing that this is imaginary, this is being made up by the mind, and that the body is simply reacting as if it is true, even though it isn't, is you're sitting now in a place where you can be completely compassionate with the entire thing. And you don't have to pay attention to the mind. You don't have to listen to what it has to say. You don't have to go along with what it's repeating. And even, the question is, uh, about appears often in our mind. I'm implied in the question is, how do I get rid of that? But the wanting to get rid of that also creates fear. Oh, now I'm afraid of being afraid, right? It's kind of this endless loop. You simply notice it, and then don't give it any more attention. Lose interest in the dire predictions that your mind comes up with. Just lose interest in them. Don't try to validate it. Is it really going to happen? Because now you're into that story, into that narrative. You're into the entire process. Just step back. Don't worry. Real danger, you'll know. You won't have to worry about it. You won't have to, this isn't going to make you vulnerable to some real problem that could happen. Believe me, it won't. It's only going to eliminate the imaginary problem. So the only thing you ever really experience is real danger when it's actually here. And you'll find that that's almost never. Does that answer it for you, Casavadas? My inner smile coach. I've had a really human day, feeling really anxious and not reacting well. I want to learn how to move away from this. What's the best way to release that? The best way to release is to totally embrace. Feeling really anxious, what you want to do is get rid of those feelings of reaction, of being anxious, and you're not reacting well. Okay, the moment you try to want to get rid of those, you've created conflict. It is conflict that is creating the problem, not the anxiousness. Say, oh, there's a feeling of anxiousness, and give it all of your attention. You say, I'm listening. What should I be anxious? Is there something? Is there a danger? And then listen. You'll find out there isn't. And something is just trying to get your attention, or something assumes there's going to be some kind of a problem. You're never going to know if you deal with it like it's some kind of intruding entity that has to be done away with or exercised, and rather than just a feeling arising within you. And if you go to the feeling to find out what it is, rather than just assuming, because your mind's got an idea of what it is and what we should do about this, if you put that aside and just go direct to the feeling, you'll find they dissolve very quickly. Just do it right now. If you're having a really human day, feeling anxious, Completely open yourself up to that feeling. Notice it. It's really just sensations going through your body. Feel them without resistance, without a thought about them, without trying to come up with some plan to get rid of them. Just feel it. Just let it be there and watch what happens. Remember, it is resistance that causes suffering, not what we're experiencing. What you are experiencing is innocent and neutral. When we resist it, when we have a conflict about it, when we say this shouldn't be here, this is happening. And that's the tension you feel. That's the really even the anxiousness. Drop the conflict. Now there's just a feeling there. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to analyze it. You just be with it. If it needs to tell you something, let it tell you something. Folks, these are just our feelings. There's nothing wrong with the feeling. There's no such thing as a bad feeling. They're all just the body responding to the environment in a preconditioned way. And the more we simply allow it to do that and create a different, safer environment for it to do that, it responds to the safe environment, drops defensive behavior, and becomes far more sensitive to what's really happening, which is almost always good, benevolent, easy. Life is benevolent. There is no suffering in life. It is only when we have an argument with life saying it should be something other than it is, that's where suffering happens. No conflict, no suffering. Is that helpful? My inner smile coach, Emma. Well, it quieted down for a second, but wham, we're all back. M. Jones says, you have spoken about identification with the body. What about mind identification? Well, yes, very good. Yeah, it's just another kind of, I mean, the body is kind of the anchor, right? But the identification is actually with the mind. It is what I believe about the body. I am a man. I am 66 years old. I am, I have these kinds of skills. I have these memories. I had these experiences as a child. We have a picture of our identity, right? That identity, just as a picture in the mind, wouldn't mean anything. It wouldn't have, thoughts can come and go all the time. It has to anchor itself somewhere, and it anchors it in the body. It doesn't see the body as being just this infinite ocean of being, this unified oneness. It sees this body is me. And so all of our beliefs and ideas and thoughts and concepts and associations and memories are now anchored in the body. Identification with the mind is simply identifying with belief, identifying with a culture, identifying with a religion, identifying with a political view or an economic view. All of those, the moment I think, this is who I am, this is right, you begin to embody that, that's an identification. So in fact, it's always mind that is identifying. It's identifying as itself. The probably more accurately to say is that we're identifying with form. That form may be solid like a body, or it could be much more nebulous like a belief, a thought pattern. I am always this. I'm always angry. I'm always sad. I'm always losing. I'm not enough. These are all beliefs. These are all thoughts that we actually take on as true. They're forms. So it really is identification with any form. Your true nature is formless. So any form is going to be a limit on it. To see that liberates you from being stuck in a belief system, being stuck in a body, being stuck in a particular way of seeing things, being stuck with your past, being stuck with karma. All of that falls away when you realize that you're not a form. So the form can be the gross form like the body, or it can be a very subtle form like a feeling that reoccurs, right? But so it really is identification with form as something different from something else. You are formless awareness. You do not have a shape any more than water has a shape. And even the container that we appear to be in is actually being generated by that same awareness. And it's not contained in it. So even the container is made of awareness. You can see that there's no binding anywhere. You are not bound at all by any thought, feeling, sensation, or form. You are free. It's not a state you get to. It's a reality you realize. Does that help you? Yes, I got the answer. Kasavada says, fear is not me. Yes, it is not. It's nothing to do with you. You are that which is aware. Allow the fear to be, right? Yes, you simply allow it to be. You don't fight it. Don't try to explain it, but also don't believe it. Right? Don't get sucked into the narrative, right? You're in the driver's seat. You're driving this bus. Izzy says, thank you very much. Yes, it helps a lot. Very good. Inner smile. You're making me smile so much, inner smile coach says. Very, very, very good. Yeah. Notice no resistance, no suffering. Yeah. Anxiety, there may be something there's actually anxious about. It may just be some energy passing through. There's no need to turn it into anything other than a feeling in the body. This is actually what Vipassana meditation mindfulness is. You're not interpreting anything. You're simply experiencing it as a feeling, as a sensation, as an experience without thought. And it will reveal itself. Whatever truth is there, it will reveal. Whatever isn't true, it just drops because it doesn't need to hold on to it. This is an infinitely intelligent system. You're dealing with all life. You're dealing with the nature of life itself when you're dealing with the thoughts, feelings, and sensations. And when you see that you are not any of those things, that you are simply the formless awareness in which all of it is happening, well, now life becomes this most miraculous and mysterious thing. And you yourself become the ultimate mystery. I don't know who I am. I just am. And I can find no limits to it. Let's see. What else did I have here? Sunil says, beautiful. I'm starting to understand the importance of combining the yoga of allowing with the yoga of wisdom. Something that you referred to in your emails. Yes, that's the twofold path, the allowing and the wisdom. Tantra and Vedanta. Deep, precise inquiry, seeing through the nature of the mind and its functioning, seeing yourself and disidentified with the form, recognize these things are just happening. And then with that seeing, you let that seeing sink into the entire system. You marinate in it until the nervous system and all its conditioned patterns begin to dissolve and they form new patterns, but those new patterns are giving expression to the reality of your being. That takes some time. That's the allowing, that's the path of wisdom and the path of allowing. It's the path of Vedanta, inquiry, or Tantra, which is the divine permeating the human. So I refer to it all the time. As a matter of fact, I think I may be want to do that as online course again. I did it at one time, from delusion to awakening, and I think I may do it again, the twofold path, coming up. I did a live retreat in Vancouver actually last year, and I'll be doing something similar. I may not have the same name, but a year from now, not until next December. Um, Kiran, is that right? Yes, Kiran says, hi GP, how do we know it is the right time to take action about a situation? How does taking action fit in with being in the present moment and feeling what we are feeling in this moment? Well, there's no contradiction. I mean, life happens, doesn't it? Actions are taking place all the time. If you really want to be fluent, you see the actions are not something that you're doing. It's not a choice you're making. This is the natural flow of life. It only starts to become confusing when we start trying to think about it and think, I've got to make a choice. Take it into your body. Forget about making a choice. You don't have to make a choice. Choices get made, but not by you. There's a choosing, but there's no chooser. Quote Buddha, there's a path, there's a walking on the path, but there's no traveler. There's a choice, there is a choosing, but there's no chooser. It's simply the choosing thought takes precedence and action takes place. Life is unfolding itself. You are not doing it. So take the burden off. Mind's going, yeah, but if I don't take the action, I'm going to lose, right? That's what I say. Okay, I lose. It takes the teeth out of it. It's like if the mind can't threaten you with something, the consequences of not making a choice, then then it doesn't matter whether you do or not. And of course, then the energy is completely open to move in whatever channels it needs to. And when the mind gets involved, and remember, all the mind is a narrowed form of thought, and we see through the mind. That's all we're going to see. We're not going to see the infinite range of possibilities. And it's going to try to compress every situation into its little criteria. It's going to just be judging things that can't be possible. It can't even see the full range of possibilities in any moment. But if you drop that and drop all the fear about it and just, okay, I get it. It's yeah, a decision is going to have to be made. So it'll be made. Who's making it? No one. It's just the inevitableness of the moment is going to happen. That which needs to happen is going to happen, period. And it's not up to me to choose that. It's not up to me to dictate it. I'm not even the one making a choice. Choosing thought simply appears. That's it. That's how it works. That's how this whole beautiful thing works. Life simply unfolds itself. When we look at it from the point of view of being this limited person, we think we're doing it. But the reality is, the thing happens, and then a split second later, the mind says, I did that. Now, this has actually been proven neurologically that we respond, and then the mind says, I did that. You've never done anything, ever. It's always after the fact that the sense of identity takes credit for what it never did. The clown comes out to take a bow for the acrobats. Take credit for something it never did. Life is just happening. Surrender to that. Put your boat in that river, and you will find that the journey is very, very easy. Helen says, thank you, GP. Very helpful. Good, good. Popcorn Machine says, hey, G from Sweden. Merry Christmas. Hello. Good to see you. Casavaras. Yes, it's my habit. It is my habit. That is right. Yes, it is simply a habit. That's it. That's it. Believing what the mind is saying is nothing but a habit. That's true. Oh my God, that's really true. No, it's not. It's just an idea about what's happening. Want to know what's really happening? Just be present with what's happening. It'll unfold itself to you. You don't need thought to know. Thought is descriptive and it's after the fact. Klesu, I better check on the time here. Oh, we're getting very close to the end. Let me a quick through here. Inner Smile says she has to go. Bye-bye. So good to have you here. Thank you so much for Kiran. I guess I am kind of running out a little bit of time. Just want to see if I have time for one more here. So I'm going through. Wonderful. Thank you, GP. Yes, I understand well. Thank you. Great. This is the most cherished Christmas this Jewish girl has ever experienced. I didn't understand the word survival nor danger, really. Fear seems to be resistance. The only danger that exists is the one I create by protecting against it. Yes, for the most part. Right. The only real fear is when, the bear is actually chasing you. Right. That's real. That that's real. But it's the same kind of mechanism. Remember, the ego takes on the 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 natural inclination of the body to survive, to stay in a form. Once the energy takes form, it wants to stabilize, it wants to stay there. The ego feels that as if it needs to survive. And so a threat to my ego feels like it's a threat to my body. It's not, obviously. It's why it's so difficult to truly transcend the ego, because it keeps triggering the natural energy of the body towards survival. Matter of fact, the body is less concerned about survival than the ego is. And this is the most Christed Christmas this Jewish girl has ever experienced. I hope that's a good thing for you. And let's see, wonderful. Thank you, GP. Before my only fear when I'm with people, I always get panic attacks around people. So how do I give the emotions all my attention while with people? Well, you can do it. Again, in this particular case, I would recommend EFT. Just picture yourself. Do you get a feeling of fear or clenching when you're just picturing yourself with people? Or maybe when you're on your way to be with people? When I work with combat veterans with PTSD, it would be very one step at a time. This one guy who couldn't go shopping during the day. He was afraid of what he would do because it was just so deep, the reaction. And a panic attack is like that. It's like PTSD. And yes, it's very awkward. And so they withdraw. He'd go shopping at 2 o'clock in the morning because there'd be nobody there. You have to go. And so what I did with him is just picture it. Picture yourself in the store, and it would be there. Okay. And then we would tap through it until he could picture himself there, and there wasn't a reaction. And I said, okay, now I want you to get on your coat like you're headed and start heading out the door. And the very thought of that, actually doing it, triggered it. So after that, then I actually had him getting in his coat and then eventually into his car. And we'd sit in the car and he'd tap and he'd drive the car and he'd drive by the store and eventually into the parking lot where he'd be in the parking lot, and then he'd go home, right? We just tap through, get some relief, and then he'd go home. Eventually he actually get out of the car and walk up to the door and then come back again. And then finally he could actually walk into the store, stay in there. In fact, he told me he was walking through, I think it was a Walmart or something, walking through the store. And as he was going through the store, things were coming up. So he was tapping, and some other guy, obviously another soldier, walked by him and says, keep doing that. It really works. He wasn't the only one that was doing that. So there's all sorts of different parts of this that your nervous system could be reacting to. So right now, if you can picture yourself in that situation and trigger something, boom, that's where you can start. And then you can start moving more closely. Now, it could be that you get a couple of steps and the whole thing just collapses and you'll be just fine. But it may be one little step at a time, because we're not really aware of the little cues in the environment that the nervous system is triggering on, that it feels threatened. And we can't analyze. There's no need. We just be with it, just the way I said it. And again, in cases like this, I will usually use something like EFT to help physiologically the body make that, because this is energy stored in the body. Right? And so tapping on the body actually helps the body adjust to the point where it can start to let some of that energy go. Iwa says, real danger. You will know. For me, that is the greatest answer. When feeling fear, first ask, is the danger real? So simple. Yes. Yeah. Is it real? Is it imminent? Or is it something I've just made up in my mind? Is it something that might happen? That's not real. Even though the image of it will create a feeling as if it were an actual danger in this moment. It's not. And you can actually look and see, look, it's okay. See, there's not a real danger. We're okay right now. Yeah, but what about later? Well, let's worry about later. You can actually retrain the entire system to not be so focused on what might happen and very much present with what it is. Oh, I like this. I don't think that this is M Jones. I don't think that I am a body. I think I have a body, but what is it that has a body? So there's confusion. You, whatever that is that has the body, it's you, right? So let's start there. It's you. Don't try to make an it, because what you're doing is say, what is that? You're trying to form another concept of you. It's you. You have it. Just this conscious awareness. You are aware of the body. Right? Yes, this body is here. Yes, very much so. And that question, okay, well then who am I? I'm not that body. Well, who am I then? So don't let it be confused. It's only confusing because the mind wants to put an object around it. You don't need the mind to answer this question. This question comes right directly from you, from the true self. So just be with it. Oh, what am I then? Become really curious. I'm not the body. I'm not my mind. I'm not these sensations. I'm not my feelings. What am I? Wow, what am I? Don't be in a hurry to grab onto an answer or think that somebody, even a teacher, is going to be able to hand it to you. This is the place I bring people, right there. Stay there, marinate there. Let that question just permeate you, and the answer will spontaneously arise. The sense of being, of who you really are, because that's the only answer to that question, is the realization, the true revelation of who you really are. Bogdan, greetings from Montenegro. Hello. Thanks for teaching me innocence. Sometimes there's objective, separate, believable world make me feel stupid and uncreative. Well, yeah, but again, nothing external, what appears to be external, is making you feel that way. That is just programmed responses. Right? So, yes, the sense of there being a world separate from you, it's a habit of thought, it's going to arise. And when that does, the sense of identity arises as well, right? Which is also being seen and perceived from that same conscious place. And that sense of identity makes me feel stupid and uncreative. But again, it's not true. That's just part of the habit. Just see it for that. And everything will be just fine. Really, you'll see so clearly, and it will stop bothering you. It won't become a problem you have to get rid of anymore. You'll simply see it. Oh, it's just the record's playing. The tape is still playing, and it's going to, and it's eventually going to play out because I'm not buying it anymore. You're well, great words, GP. Thanks once again. You're welcome. Thanks very much, G. Happy Christmas. Says before I am. Mark Nolan, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Thank you all. Thank you all. GP, you refer to many Sanskrit terms here and types of yoga, Buddhism, Advaita, etc. Is it possible to summarize them either here or in note form? Oh my. Well, to me, they're different expressions of the same thing. And because I've seen that, I can grab from all of these different traditions because all of them are doing the same thing. And we're trying to point to that which is beyond all forms, that which is not an Advaita tradition or a Buddhist tradition or a yogic tradition or a Sufi tradition, but is the essence of all traditions. So I'll use whatever words are available, whatever stories, whatever metaphors that are common, whether it be a story of Christ or Moses, or whether it be Balyane or Rumi or Buddha or Bodhidharma. If it's a metaphor that will work for the people I'm talking to, I'm totally down with it. So I don't want to be summarizing a particular tradition, um, because I think that kind of narrows it. It's just whatever lights you up, whatever tradition you came from, whatever resonates with you as being truth. That is the breadcrumbs. Follow those, right? In the beginning, it might not be the whole absolute truth, but follow it and take it down to its depths, and it will reveal it. So it is after 3 now. I am going to have to uh, to bring it to a close. M says, shivers felt when listening to your answer. Good. I guess that means it worked. Uh, Absolutely wonderful. Chrissy says, beautiful. Thank you, G. Thank you. All love and peace. It's, oh God, so many wonderful questions. I wish I could just keep going, but I do have to bring it to a close now. You know, I'll bet some of you have been listening to me enough that you could even imagine what my answer might be. What that means is that you have within you a budding understanding that you can go directly to. You can become your own teacher. Just try it. What would Buddha say about this? What would Jay say about this? What would Muji say about this? And just see if you can find your way into your own wisdom and see how it unfolds for you. It's really very powerful to do that, because ultimately that's where we want to get. It's ultimately the teacher wants to disappear, just kind of vanish from the picture, because you find the Sadguru, the teacher that's within, which is what's really been guiding you the entire time. I'm just the face that happens to be wearing for a brief period of time. So Ewa says, thank you for your beautiful satsang. Happy Christmas. He says, thank you. Merry Christmas. Thank you. So thank you to all. Thank you to every last one of you. As always, it has been just such a joy to be here. I love the questions. So please like and share. And, if this is resonating with you, please share it with others so it can resonate with them as well. So until next time, I love you all. Namaste.